AEW Dynamite starts off with a Christian Cage promo. He's getting interviewed by Tony Schiavone. He basically addresses what happened last week and mentions how, he stepped away from from cashing in on Bryan Danielson simply because, the Blackpool Combat Club ended up interfering, so he ended up backing away. But that is still the goal, still the objective, and that he eventually will become AEW World Champion eventually. Me personally, I wouldn't mind Christian Cage as AEW World Champion. Now, not now, of course, but in the future, if it happens, I actually wouldn't hate the booking decision because I actually find him very. I love Christian Cage. I find him very entertaining, and I think his championship run would actually be entertaining. I don't know how long he would actually hold it for. He'll probably be more of a transitional champion, but overall, I still think his championship. I still think a championship run from Christian Cage will actually be amazing. Then following that, we end up getting a segment with Hangman and Jeff Jarrett. Jeff Jarrett ended up approaching Hangman after getting interviewed. Ended up saying that this path that he's taken, this very dark path that he's taken, he's going to regret it in the future, basically. Then Hangman, no, before Hangman even speak, then Jeff Jarrett ends up alluding to the past that him and Hangman has, and that that Hangman will regret putting his hands on his wife. Then they both end up brawling for a bit. Security has to break them up. So this looks like this is going to be the next feud to buy some time for Hangman to eventually to get back at Swerve, because I don't think Swerve and Hangman are done yet. I'm assuming they're going to continue to feud. So this is just a little, feud for a bit to give Hangman something to do once Swerve comes back from the match at All Out. So overall, solid 7. Afterwards, we end up getting the new Blackpool Combat Club. Private Party came out, but then they end up getting attacked by Jon Moxley, Pac, and Claudio. And I always forget that woman's name. I really need to learn her name. I think it starts with an M. I know that. I think her name. I think it's no. I don't think it's Mina, but I really need to learn her name. But Pac gets on the microphone and he ends up saying that he was lost, but now he found a new purpose. And he ends up saying that AEW is going downhill, and he ends up mentioning, what happened last week at All Out, and said that it was inevitable, that was going to happen regardless. Then they just leave the ring. So they're slowly building up this new Blackpool Combat Club, slowly giving us teases, which I do like. They're slowly building up this story, giving it week by week, telling us a story. I am loving it. It has a lot of potential. I like Pac. Claudio, I never understood the hype with Claudio personally, but still, still, Claudio's in the group. Still, Jon Moxley. I'm interested in the woman. I don't know much about her, so you guys can inform me, but it has potential. I'm loving what they're doing so far. Then afterwards, we end up getting a match between Ricochet and Sammy Guevara. Ricochet ends up beating Sammy Guevara. Soon after, Ricochet ended up getting attacked by Mortos, if I'm not mistaken, that's his name. Ends up getting attacked, but then out of nowhere, but then Sammy ends up coming in, making sure Mortos stopped the attack. Don't know where this is going to lead. I know they had this match to build up Ricochet, because with him and Will Ospreay had a segment, I think at All Out, if I'm not mistaken, where Will Ospreay ended up calling out Ricochet, telling him that he needs to get some victory so he can have a match. So of course they're building up Ricochet for that, but are they also going to plan a feud with Ricochet to fight between Mortos? Because I don't understand why you have them attack if you're not going to have them feud. Just saying. But I didn't watch this match because I already knew who was going to win and I wasn't interested. But overall, this is just to build up Ricochet to eventually get to Will Ospreay. So overall, not going to speak too much on it because I know Sammy hasn't been on Dynamite in a while. I know he's mainly been on Ring of Honor. So, but but I don't know where this is going to head to personally. Or this is just something just to add. Now we end up getting a quick segment. Don Callis ends up approaching Okada with Tenosuke Takeshita, mentions the match at All Out, and ends up mentioning that he didn't pin Takeshita. Okada basically ended up mentioning how Takeshita will be champion, but he won't be champion for the Continental title. They end up they didn't have a back and forth, but Okada and Takeshita ended up having a stare down, so it looks like potentially that match is going to be building up very soon, probably at Grand Slam or maybe at Wrestle Dream possibly, but this match will happen. We all know Okada is winning, but I'm very interested in the match because I love Tenosuke Takeshita as an in-ring performer. I think he's an amazing in-ring performer, so having him with Okada, I think that would be a fantastic match. Now we get to Darby Allin. Darby Allin finally makes his appearance on Dynamite. He basically comes out and basically addressed that he wants Jon Moxley to come out. Jon Moxley comes out. Darby Allin starts talking to Moxley, ends up mentioning his struggles, before AEW, mentions the love that he has for AEW and that AEW has done everything for him. Then he ends up mentioning how he met Jon Moxley and how he looked up to Jon Moxley. But then he ends up alluding to what Jon Moxley and the BCC did to Bryan Danielson at All Out and that he doesn't agree with it. He doesn't agree with it and that he would never do something like that to someone that he loves. Then he ends up alluding to what does Jon Moxley want with him. Moxley cuts to the chase and ends up saying that Darby Allin needs to give up his championship opportunity at Grand Slam because he is not ready to become world champion. Darby Allin, of course, being the guy that he is, of course, is going to decline. Ends up saying that Moxley needs to earn the opportunity. Mox ends up saying that he wants a match at Grand Slam for his AEW World Championship opportunity, and that he would prove to Darby Allin exactly where he falls in the pecking order. I love this. This is very interesting. The match is confirmed at Grand Slam, so interested to see how that plays out. I know that Bryan and Moxley had 2 matches, if I'm not mistaken, and Mox won both of them, so they could build up upon that to have Bryan finally beat Jon Moxley eventually. So I actually like where this story is going. I'm actually interested in see how this plays out. I would just assume Moxley would just win immediately, but they could do a thing where Moxley is chasing Darby. But I'm actually interested to see how this plays out. I'm actually interested in the story, actually invested. This storyline could actually go somewhere where Moxley and the new BCC being heels with Bryan having no friends, having to overcome Moxley and the new BCC. So this can actually work. I actually enjoy this. This was a solid promo. I'm actually excited to see where this goes. I'm not even the biggest Jon Moxley fan, but this is actually getting me kind of interested in him. So I'm interested to see where this storyline goes. Next, we end up getting Mariah May. I think she had a championship match against Empanada, if I'm not mistaken. She ended up winning, of course. After the match, she ends up getting on the microphone and ends up saying that something is missing, someone is missing, and that the person that is missing is Mina Shirakawa, which I kind of predicted she was going to say because I was like, she's not going to say Toni Storm. It's way too early for her to miss Toni Storm. She basically wants Mina Shirakawa back. Don't know how they're going to play this story. They're probably going to do the whole angle of Mina rejects Mariah. Mariah probably fights for her back, and then eventually they become basically having that close friendship like they once had. Because I like the friendship between her and Mina Shirakawa. I thought it was entertaining, which was very weird. Because typically stuff like that doesn't work for me, but I actually like the friendship. So I'm interested to see where that angle goes because Mariah May, as of right now, doesn't really have much of a story with her since winning the AEW championship because her main story was Toni Storm, so she doesn't have much to go off of afterwards. So Mina Shirakawa is the next best thing, so I'm interested to see where that plays too. Now we end up getting Chris Jericho on the learning tree. Chris Jericho has been very frustrated at Orange Cassidy because he still wants his $7,000 from what happened, I think 4 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. I wasn't around when it happened, but 4 years ago, I think Orange Cassidy ends up pouring orange juice on his $7,000 jacket. And he ended up wearing the jacket to Dynamite with the orange juice stains all over it. Basically, he's demanding the $7,000. He wants the $7,000. And I don't think it was earlier in the show. It was either on Collision or last week Dynamite. Maybe I didn't cover it, but he ended up stealing Orange Cassidy's backpack. He stole Orange Cassidy's backpack and brought it to the ring and ends up pulling out a picture of him and best friends. Pulls out a picture of him and best friends and ends up saying that Orange Cassidy is too obsessed for friendship and that there's no friends in wrestling and that if you do have a friend, they're probably just using you. When he said this, Big Bill looked at Chris Jericho with a bit of concern. He looked at him very concerned and worried. So it looks like they're slowly planting the seeds, maybe. Or this could have just been something added, but it looks like they are planting the seeds of Big Bill potentially could turn on Chris Jericho eventually. But then he ends up keep demanding the $7,000. But then Orange Cassidy goes on a Dynatron, and then out of nowhere, it's Mark Briscoe and Kyle O'Reilly. They're in some type of forklift or some sort. I don't know the exact thing. And they end up pouring $7,000 worth of coins in Chris Jericho's Bentley. I don't know. I know next week at Grand Slam, I don't think it's Grand Slam next week. I think it's 2 weeks away. But at Grand Slam, I think it is confirmed that Orange and Chris Jericho will have a match. I don't know where the end goal is here because I know Orange probably wants his backpack back and then Chris wants the $7,000. I will say this. I'm not that interested in the story, but I will say this. This story is somehow more interesting than Hook and Chris Jericho, even though that feud was more personal, which is very weird. But this story is more interesting for whatever reason. So I'm kind of hooked to it, even though I'm not the most entertained by it, but I'm slightly hooked to it for whatever reason. Now we end up getting Nigel. He ends up cutting a promo, and he ends up mentioning how Grand Slam could potentially not have an AEW World Championship match due to Bryan Danielson getting attacked last week at All Out. Then he ends up mentioning Bryan Danielson's career and mentions how he should have had that career that Bryan had and that he's tired of watching on the sidelines and that Bryan Danielson is afraid of having a match against him. He ends up saying that he went to Tony Khan and that he made it official that it will be him and Bryan Danielson at Grand Slam. I don't know much about Nigel. I know he had a huge pop at All In and seems like the fans love him. So I don't know much about him. I don't know I know that I don't know, is he a former wrestler? Is he still wrestling? Is he like is he retired but comes back? I don't know. I don't know what the deal is, but I know he's very loved by AEW. So and I'm assuming he's a great wrestler. So I'm assuming the match will be a banger. So don't have much to go off of because I don't know much about Nigel, but it will be him and Bryan Danielson at Grand Slam. Now we end up getting to Hook. I'm not gonna speak too much on this. Hook ended up basically calling out Roger Strong, challenging him to a match for the FTW Championship. They've been building up this feud for a bit, which I'm assuming probably is going to happen at Grand Slam with Hook retaining. I don't know if the feud is going to go further than that. I don't know I don't know what the feud is going to go. I don't know if it's going to go further than one match. Honestly, I mainly review Hook simply because Hook is one of the more popular and more liked AEW wrestlers. Hook for me just doesn't hit for me personally, but to be fair, I also think it's because of the stories he's in as well. So I feel like that's part of the big reason why I don't really like Hook that much, because the FTW Championship doesn't do him any favors. But it looks like most likely it's going to be him and Roger Strong at Grand Slam. Now we get to the main event. We got the tag team gauntlet match, number one contendership match to see who will face the Young Bucks at Grand Slam. Not going to speak too much on this match. The match was good, of course. But we get towards the end of the match. It's Dante Martin and then Kyle Fletcher. Dante Martin ends up going for a dive, but Kyle Fletcher ends up putting his knees up. Out of nowhere, Will Ospreay ends up hitting the hidden blade, which allowed Kyle Fletcher to pick up the pin, and him and Will Ospreay will face the Young Bucks at Grand Slam. Earlier in the show, Don Callis ends up giving Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher an opportunity to be in the Casino Gauntlet match. Will at first did decline, but then Don Callis ends up mentioning that Will Ospreay did say that he owed Don Callis a favor, so Don Callis calls in that favor. So this is how Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher got into the match. Very interested to see what happens at Grand Slam, because Will Ospreay doesn't lose matches ever. He only loses when he gets cheated, so most likely they will get cheated. I just wonder how he would get cheated. Most likely, but overall, this was a really good episode of Dynamite. Stories progress, slowly building up, slowly progressing. So I enjoy with this episode of Dynamite. I really enjoy what they're doing here. I'm excited to see what's next. But you guys let me know your opinions down below. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. But yeah, that's it.